Hey there, ready to dive into the wild world of Bitcoin?
It's one I always watch closely, especially right now, with Bitcoin potentially at a turning point.
You and me both. We're cutting through the noise to figure out what this indicator might be telling us about where Bitcoin could be headed.
And more importantly, understand why everyone's so fixated on it right now.
Exactly. The article compares the stochastic RSI to a car's speedometer.
It's all about momentum. Is it fading or building?
So if the regular RSI tells us how fast Bitcoin's price is moving, the stochastic RSI is hinting at whether the price is about to run out of gas or slam on the accelerator.
The stochastic RSI uses two lines on a chart, one blue, one orange, to visualize this.
And the article and everyone else seems obsessed with when these two lines cross over.
Right, and for good reason. That crossover can be a powerful signal.
Imagine the blue line, which tracks short-term momentum, cutting above that orange line, which represents longer-term momentum.
That can mean the market, which may have been sluggish, is suddenly energized.
Now, the article points out this crossover doesn't happen every day.
In fact, we're talking about a 2-week crossover that historically only occurs about once a year for Bitcoin.
So why should we care?
Because when it has happened, Bitcoin's price has made some major moves.
We're talking massive rallies and, unfortunately, sometimes painful crashes.
It shakes things up, that's for sure.
Like back in September of 2023, right? Bitcoin was hovering around $25,000. This crossover occurred. And boom, it skyrocketed to $74,000 over the next few months.
Now, before you go using the stochastic RSI to place bets with your rent money, we have to remember, it's not as simple as just spotting a crossover and assuming history will repeat itself.
Talk about a wild ride.
The article stresses the importance of context, particularly Bitcoin's market structure.
Okay, so like building a house, you can't just slap up walls and a roof and call it a day, right?
Precisely. And the article breaks this market structure into 3 phases.
You need that solid foundation.
First, we have accumulation, where that strong foundation is built. We saw this recently with Bitcoin finding solid support around that $25,000 level.
Then comes phase 2, building on that foundation.
But, and this is where it gets interesting, the article points out that last time around phase 2 was well, shaky.
It's like they forgot to put in the support beams for the second floor.
Exactly. Last time, we didn't see steady building. We saw a short-lived rally to about $50,000, followed by a pretty nasty crash.
So where does that leave us now with this whole Bitcoin house analogy? What phase are we in, and is it built to code this time?
The market just wasn't structurally sound enough to support that kind of rapid growth. We're in phase 3 now, the make it or break it stage.
Because if that crossover does happen, and this time, the market is structurally sound.
This is where the market works on rebuilding trust, proving it's learned from past mistakes. Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
And this is where things get really fascinating, especially when we consider the potential for this stochastic RSI crossover.
If history repeats itself, we could be looking at Bitcoin surging to new all-time highs.
Okay, now I'm really hooked. So how do we know if this house can weather the storm this time? What should we be looking for?
That's where those support levels we talked about earlier come into play.
Right.
Remember how during that shaky second phase, the market crashed through those key support levels?
Yeah, like it was going through a trapdoor.
No, not at all.
Yikes.
But this time it's been different. The market has been respecting those levels, holding steady, not crumbling under pressure. That tells us there's more underlying strength. The big players, the institutions, they see Bitcoin's long-term potential. They're not hitting the panic button just yet.
So instead of a shaky second floor, we've got reinforced steel beams holding things up. That makes me feel a bit better.
It's definitely encouraging. And here's where things get even more intriguing. The article brings up another technical pattern, the bull flag, that's been forming alongside all of this.
Now, this is where I need some guidance because, to be honest, I have no idea what a bull flag is.
Okay.
When I see a flag, I think of surrender.
Right. Well, this is the opposite. Think of it like this. A flagpole shooting up represents the price of Bitcoin rising quickly. Then you've got the flag itself waving back and forth, representing a period when the price moves sideways, like the market's taking a breather, catching its breath.
So it's like a pause, a moment of consolidation after a big run-up.
Exactly. And traders see this bull flag pattern as a sign that the market could be getting ready for another surge upward, like it's getting ready to climb the rest of that flagpole.
Okay, so let me see if I'm connecting the dots correctly. We have this rare stochastic RSI crossover potentially on the horizon. We've got this bull flag pattern forming, which often precedes a price surge. A and D. The market seems to be showing some real structural strength. Is it safe to say that all signs are pointing to a potential Bitcoin breakout?
It's certainly a possibility, but remember, we can't look at these indicators in isolation. It's all about context. What makes this particular moment so compelling is that we're not just seeing potential momentum signals with these indicators, but also those signs of genuine underlying strength in the market.
So it's not just a quick sugar rush. It could be a more sustained move upwards.
That's the hope, and that's what we need to be watching for. If this market can hold its ground, keep building on this foundation, well, things can get very interesting.
Now, this has been incredibly insightful, but let's shift gears for a second and talk about our listener. Because not everyone is glued to Bitcoin charts 24/7, right? What does all of this mean for the average person who might be interested in Bitcoin but doesn't necessarily live and breathe the markets?
That's a great point. Even if you're not a day trader making split-second decisions, having a basic understanding of these indicators gives you a much better sense of the forces at play in the Bitcoin market. It's like peeking behind the curtain, learning the language that traders use to make decisions.
So it's less about predicting the future and more about being informed.
Exactly. It's about cutting through the noise, the hype, the fear, all the emotions that surround Bitcoin and making more informed decisions. Knowledge is power, even in the world of crypto.
I like that. So for our listener who might be thinking, okay, this all sounds interesting, but what am I actually looking for? What should I be watching out for? What are the key takeaways here?
When it comes to the stochastic RSI, remember, it's not enough for just that blue line to cross above the orange one. We want to see both lines, both the short-term and long-term momentum indicators, cross above that 20-level threshold. That's the confirmation signal that gets traders really excited.
So it's like a double confirmation, both indicators aligned and ready to go. It's like getting two green lights before you hit the gas.
Exactly. And I can't emphasize this enough. Don't rely on any single indicator in isolation. The stochastic RSI, the bull flag pattern, these are just tools in a much larger toolbox. Well, always do your own research, consider different perspectives, and be prepared for the unexpected because the crypto market loves to keep us on our toes.
So we've been talking about Bitcoin and the stochastic RSI and bull flags and market structure.
It's a lot to think about.
It really is. And I think what's so fascinating to me is, like we were saying earlier, it's not just about like staring at charts all day and like trying to time the market perfectly.
Right. It's bigger than that.
It's about understanding these like underlying forces that are shaping the future of like not just Bitcoin, but potentially like the entire financial system.
Yeah. You have to kind of zoom out and look at the bigger picture.
Exactly. So if this all plays out, if we see this like 2-week stochastic RSI crossover, and this time the market holds strong.
Like that house we were talking about with a solid foundation.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What could that mean for Bitcoin a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now?
Well, if I could predict the future with that kind of accuracy, I'd be on a beach somewhere, sipping something a lot fancier than coffee right now.
I hear you. But we can still speculate.
Of course. And that's part of the fun, isn't it?
Absolutely. So let's say just for a moment that Bitcoin does follow a similar path to what happened after that last 2-week crossover back in 2023.
We're talking about the possibility of another massive bull run.
Right. But this time, potentially a more sustainable one.
Exactly. Because the market structure is looking much stronger this time around.
So instead of that like boom and bust cycle we've seen in the past,
It might be a steadier climb.
less of a roller coaster, more like a nice hike.
I like that analogy.
A nice hike to the top of a mountain.
And imagine what that would mean, not just for Bitcoin, but for the entire crypto space.
If Bitcoin, the OG, if you will,
The pioneer.
if it can prove that it's not just a fad, that it's here to stay,
That it can weather the storms.
that could be a game changer.
Absolutely.
So where does that leave us then? What's the takeaway for our listener?
I think the most important thing is to stay curious. Keep learning. Don't be afraid to dive in and explore this world.
It can seem intimidating at first, all the charts, the jargon, the technology.
But it's like anything else. The more you learn, the more you understand.
And knowledge is power.
Especially in the world of crypto.
Couldn't agree more. So whether you're just starting your Bitcoin journey or you've been hodling since the early days, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and most importantly, stay informed, because in the world of crypto, things rarely stay quiet for long.
That's the beauty of it all.